Hi there, guys. I am back for a very questioning video. These are the kinds of thoughts that just come to my mind sometimes when I'm pondering upon symbols and symbolism and just kind of going through the zodiac and comparing different things. One of the things that we've learned in our modern society is that form follows function. And when we see outside externally in the world at the shapes of buildings that are going up, they are climbing to the skies right now, but their basic form is a cube. And that cube, as we know, for the age of Aquarius, represents Saturn, the black cube of Saturn. So, what does it all mean? Well, just diving into this Saturnian thing, Saturn is cubed over Earth, and Earth is also cubed. This is space and time. Earth is space, Saturn is time. And this is all in a spiritual context as well as a physical context. So, another thing to consider is that the cube represents all things earthly, the earthly desires, the material world. It's focused on that. So, and that's kind of what we see all around us, is that everyone's focused on the material world. But what else is there? With darkness, it represents yin. So it could also be that there's this interconnectedness to spirit that Saturn also represents, because he represents the ruler of the dream world, all things of dreamland, because he's considered the Sandman as well, the ruler of dreams. Saturn is the lord of this world. He is the one that will challenge you in your birth chart, or he could favor you depending on where he is in the placement of the houses. So these are all the things. And no, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a dark death energy. It's not just about that. Saturn has good aspects as well as mostly the challenging ones. But the ones who are out here on the world stage, the ones that we can consider part of the crime syndicate that has taken over the world, they've been harnessing that energy in a negative context to work black magic against people. That's basically what we're dealing with. So it's not the Elohim that are bad, because those Elohim are absolutely a part of us. It's mainly the ones who come out here to use the knowledge against others. That's the black magic aspect. And that's the aspect that we're dealing with, that we're coming into awareness of. And that's the key takeaway to this whole Saturnian narrative. Now, looking at our zodiac wheel, if we truly are going into Aquarius or also Capricorn via Vedic knowledge, then they are both ruled by Saturn. This is Saturn's symbol. It is upside down in this aspect. It is a scythe, though. It is it looks like an H, but it's a scythe to represent Saturn and his scythe of death, because all things die in time. So when I was considering this wheel and considering all the different buildings that have been constructed over thousands of years, I was kind of struck by the notion that Gemini, over here in the Golden Age, the symbol of Gemini kind of represents the buildings, the Greek buildings. These. Isn't that fascinating? That there's a lot of similarity here. You have two equal signs, basically. They're parallel to each other, and it represents balance. You can also find this form in Japanese temples. Fascinating observation that this looks very similar to this, and also to this. But when we further look at some of the symbolism that's found here in this zodiac, we can go to Taurus, and we see that Taurus is ruled by Venus, But let's go look at some buildings that might represent this era. How about some of these? We've seen these domed structures before. Kind of interesting, right? I mean, it has a circle, and then you have the plus sign, basically, the cross that's coming off the end. There's a lot of buildings that are actually built this way. So perhaps this represents a womb. Just interesting observations. Some of the old buildings, how they might represent the age of Taurus. I mean, I don't know. I'm just throwing this out there because it's just like modern day buildings. They're all cube shaped. And even though we don't see the cube here, we do see a cube over here in Capricorn for the energy, the earth energy that's going to be brought in. So we have earth, fire, air, and water. These are the 4 elements of alchemy, and it continues around the wheel here. So you have water, air, earth, fire, water, air, earth, fire, water, air, earth, fire, which would indicate that the age that we go into is dominated by a particular element. As we already know that Aquarius is the air sign, and Pisces being the water sign. Perhaps this is why there were so many floods. The consciousness of men in this plane were driven to cause flooding on the land in many different places. This is for the yin faction of men, basically the ones who are of darkness, of destruction. They were led to harness that energy of water and use it. And now we're kind of going into this idea of air. So, if you can't do a whole lot with a hurricane, say, maybe you're going to use that air to amplify your fire principle. And then, maybe in Capricorn energy, they cause earthquakes. I don't know. This is just trying to put pieces of the puzzle together and just throwing out ideas to try to make something coalesce from the thoughts that cross my mind. So let's look at some other interesting notes. So here we have Aries. Aries is ruled by Mars. And so Mars, being the planet of war and other things, other different energies, let's go look at some of the things that are represented in this time. Now, keep in mind, too, that this is a fire sign. So what did we see a lot of? Pyramids. Working with fire, which is the principle of the spirit. Perhaps this is when these were used and harnessed, and they harnessed the energy of the earth. And, all their mysteries are still lost to us right now. But I suspect we're going to be gaining some insight into all of this. So here's all the different ones that are around the world, all the different shapes that they were using. Each culture had their own designs, and I'm sure they had specific purposes to harness not only the orgone energy of the earth, but to amplify that energy upwards. And inside the pyramid has amazing different abilities. If you go and just look at some of the research that the Russians have done on pyramid technology, they've had some fascinating results with the different shapes and materials that they use. So yeah, that's very interesting. But here's one of our modern day pyramids. And honestly, perhaps the Eiffel Tower represents the coming age of iron. This is the Iron Winter right here. And perhaps the Eiffel Tower was built as a monument to state now is the time of the Iron Age. So let's erect a large monument to represent this Iron Age that we're going into. And it's a pyramid, which would be next to the age of Aries. So, perhaps there's a segue over into Pisces with this kind of line of thinking. I don't know. I'm throwing it out there. So, because I found it really interesting that a lot of these symbols can be found in the structures of the different buildings that are remnants of ages gone by. And we're still trying to catch up with that history. So let's look at it in terms of form following function. Like I said, and what the energy of the age represents is kind of spelled out in buildings. I mean, if you've got Saturn representing the cube and all of the cube energy that's being brought in with every shape, color, and style representing Saturn right now. I mean, we see so much of it everywhere. Cubes literally littering our lives, black cubes specifically. So you can see this energy that is surrounding us now. And perhaps it's just the level of consciousness, or maybe it's the subconsciousness in man that creates this energy. There's some sort of set design to the cosmos. And if we just look a little closer at the details, we can begin to see the subtle whispers of the different energies of the ages that we merge into. So then we get into the age of Pisces. And Pisces is over here. It usually represents the two fish or the 2 feet of the human body. And it's ruled by Jupiter, which is also Thor. And this is the logo for Pisces. It's also the logo for the Hilton Hotel. It's also, look, if you stand it on its end, like it is right now, it's the little man that's seen on different effigies and petroglyphs. Yeah, people say that he's part of an energy construct, and it is, absolutely. Like these different shapes, I'm sure, come from some sort of form of energy. And this is how they come up with the designs. But since this is supposed to be properly, set up like an H, basically, it could quite possibly represent these. These cathedrals look very similar to the Piscean logo. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. And we've been in that age, where the Catholic Church has been utilizing these cathedrals that we now know were healing centers and not churches. So what do you say? I mean, I think it's something to kind of consider, these different shapes and the different logos of the ages. I think we're onto something here with this line of thinking. Now, I could be completely off, but I just found it interesting to find these correlations. And I wanted to put it out there for other people to consider, because there's a story being told out in the world. And are we following someone else's narrative? Because it does seem that way. It seems like the construct has its own intelligent design, and that man, as he is part of the universe and is part of that consciousness, we tend to play along and follow along with these energies and the movements of those energies in whatever direction they pull us. And I believe that the push-pull of a yin and yang determines this whole faction of what we consider evil and light or goodness, and that it's a forever sine wave of energy that continues to utilize its function to urge us to choose our path. And we either choose darkness or we choose light. And those are the only 2 options. There's usually not much in between, although we can have absolute duality. And that somehow we're supposed to find the pivotal central point between the 2. We're not supposed to lean too much to the right, which would be the yang. We're not supposed to lean too much to the yin, which is the left. But somewhere right in the middle is where gold is, the golden path. The golden path to the sun. The sun in alchemy is a circle with a dot in the middle. That's the center, the heart center. Following that path is where we're supposed to be. And the earth is always featured with it's a cross with a circle. So it's a cross inside the circle. That's earth, but it's also considered Odin's eye and also a medicine wheel. This is a solar wheel, but it's also considered a medicine wheel in Native American teachings. But this is considered Odin's eye, and it's the oldest symbol in North Europe, meaning the sun brings joy to earth, unity, balance in all things, wisdom, spiritual ascension to God, consciousness, vertical line, and low consciousness of earth plane, which is the horizontal line, all father of Odin. Interesting, right? Here we have medicine wheel. Now, these medicine wheels are always going to be different. I have not found anything but confusion when coming to these kinds of images, because each tribe has their own idea of which color is to the east, west, north, and south, where things lie on the wheel. It usually has everything to do with the sun. So the sun rises in the east, sets to the west. The east is the light, the west is the dark. And that's basically what is determined by all of this. So the north is usually associated with cold, and the south is usually associated with heat. At least the equator is. Now, once you get beneath the equator, all of it changes. So that might be why a lot of these wheels change. If you're below the equator, the north is going to be warm and the south is going to be cold, or something like that. I mean, because you have the South Pole and you have the North Pole and they're both cold. This is just more stuff to consider. So I just wanted to kind of go over that information, just to kind of throw that out there to the collective consciousness and get people to start mulling this over in their minds, because there's something interesting about the form following the function. And it's actually resonating with the energies of each age, I suspect. A lot of things, or actually literally everything, not just a lot of things, everything is tied into the great wheel of time. Everything in existence is tied into this wheel. Now, there's different wheels with different designs, different shapes. Every artist is different, but it has a lot of the same knowledge and the same information. And it's jam-packed with information, and it reads like a book. This is our story right here in a nutshell. And if we just take the time to learn something from it, and especially the symbolism that's here, it will tell us so much about ourselves and our world and how we fit into this entire construct. Because it apparently is starting to come to fruition that it is just a story. And this story is played out in a world stage manner, and that there's many different players to this game, and that the game continues to play even after we step out of the story. It's like we go to timeout, we're out of the game, everybody else keeps playing, and time just keeps moving along until everybody else's time ends. And then they get to step out of the game and take a break. And then we all come back in different moments. And if you get into spiritual teachings, they teach you that you chose the time to come in, the stars aligned, they manifested you, you come in, you play your role, and then you leave and you take all of that teaching, all of the knowledge that you gained, you take it with you, and your soul just keeps acquiring the knowledge each time you come to incarnate. This is what most of these different spiritual teachings out in the world will tell you, is that it's an eternal path, basically, to walk in the light and to attain light. You can actually achieve it in one lifetime, to be able to zoom faster and speed up your evolution of soul if you embrace wholeheartedly the notion of becoming the Buddhist, where you see every life as very sacred. You meditate and you're constantly working on yourself. They say it can be achieved. And the rainbow body that these other monks can achieve, people have witnessed it and they talk about it. And some of these stories are just amazing and fascinating. And yes, I do believe that's what we're here for, is to ultimately achieve this higher state of consciousness, so that at some point, the soul either determines whether it wants to incarnate again and live forever and choose when it wants to die, or you can also choose to never incarnate again because you want to do work on higher levels. This is what consciousness is all about, is what all of these different tales out here from people who have died and come back, and then, all of the monks, and literally everything in our existence, people are talking about their experiences, and most people aren't even listening because we live in such a world where everything is distorted and it's made to keep us distracted from who we truly are. I don't know. This is all stuff to chew on. And perhaps we can find even more shapes of buildings out here in the world based on some of these other elements and the logos of these signs and symbols. I don't know. I mean, even Libra could look like some of those buildings, the domed buildings. I don't know. I mean, I just think it's interesting to kind of think of it this way, in this manner. The one that really got me was the Gemini, and how you have these parallel lines, and that's exactly what these look like. I mean, it looks like parallel lines in the facade usually, and then these are all the way around. And I imagine the energy of these buildings is nothing less than amazing. I mean, yes, this is a cube shape, a basic cube shape, but you have all of these circles. If you were to look at this from above, you would see all these circles, and it would be a circle within a circle because of the width of how wide the column gets. In radionics, this is radiating all kinds of interesting fields of energy. So, I would love to be back in this age. I long to be back there because I know that I was there once, and something inside me remembers it. And I long to be with these structures, especially the stone. The stone is what I'm looking for the most. And we don't use stone to create our buildings anymore. We live in a world where sticks and bricks, things that deteriorate, those things are the things that we use to build our structures. But some people are stepping out and building the Adobe style homes again. They're actually making mud homes instead of, using concrete. They're actually using the dirt because it lasts for a very, very, very long time, and you don't have to keep updating it. You don't have to upgrade it. This is why I suspect all of those people that are considered to be primitive are not primitive. They were actually just using all of the elements around them because it's free. And here we are in a society where we're actually paying for all this stuff that's free. Why? I don't know. I belong in a different tribe away from this crazy society now that I've awakened fully. I wasn't like this all my life, but there's been something inside me that's been like, something's not right here, following along, but then going, no, I'm kind of set apart from the crowd. I always have been ever since I've arrived in this existence. And now I see why. I belong to a different time period, but I also belong to a different mindset. I see the world completely differently from most people. And the natural world, I know, is the proper method. But how do we get there from where we are? How do we get back to a sustainable way of living? I know that many groups are forming right now, and they're stepping out and trying to achieve this, because we're living in this deception of paying taxes and paying for our mortgage, paying for bills, to have utilities and all these. We don't need all these things. That they're just a luxury. It's just part of modern luxury society. And is it a real luxury when you have to become a slave to it? I don't agree with it, but yeah, it's a benefit, and it's lovely to have certain amenities. But at the same time, I just see it as, I could live without it personally. It makes our lives easier on one level, but it's a slavery right now, and we have to find the free energy again. And I know people can do it. All we have to think about is the Baghdad battery. If we just think in terms of this design, which is clay, and most clay uses iron. This is what a lot of people don't consider. The clay uses iron, and then you have the copper. Again, this is Mars and Venus at work, okay? When you have copper, you have Venus. When you have iron, you have Mars. So, and red clay in Georgia has a lot of iron content, and this is why the red bricks actually put off an electrical charge, and especially once it's harnessed with a copper pipe or a copper wire, and then you put a liquid, and this liquid, I don't know if it's vinegar or if it's just water. It could possibly just be water, and then this is corked over. I'm not sure if they put a zinc core in here or what, but listen, you can get electrical charges from this kind of stuff. It's very simple. It's very basic alchemy. But, that's why we need more people to start looking into alchemy and then looking into these electrical currents that these different alchemical substances can create with each other, because that's really the basis for all things. And then, looking into the trees that are actually able to put out an electrical charge, we're creating electrical charges. So all life out here, air, fire, water, earth, it's all one big battery. We just need to be able to tap into it. So what I suspect that Nikola Tesla was doing is that he had probably a center pipe that went down into the earth and accessed the water table. And then because this thing was so high up in the air, he was reaching the air and fire principle and magnifying it with all of these shapes. These are pyramid shapes. And they're also, you can consider it air, fire, and water, but this is a pyramid shape. And notice how it's an octagon. Well, that's also going to be a very powerful shape. So these are all sacred geometric designs stacked on top of each other because he was an alchemist and he knew that these different things could create a certain frequency. This is what we're talking about. We need to start thinking in terms of form follows function. And that function can tap into the ethers of what the elements also portray. So the ether's connected to everything, but then you have the air, the fire, the water, and the earth, as above, so below. And once you connect them like a tree, you can then harness energy straight from the earth. The earth has all the current and energy that we need. The electricity is up in the air. The magnetism is down below. Let's do this. Let's figure out this whole alchemical process. I know there's people out here working on it and they've already figured out a lot of this, but where are they and what are they doing? The breakthrough energy movement is a movement that was happening for many years now. They've been having different meetings over in like Norway. It's somewhere over there in one of those countries, and they've been meeting to try to figure out how to get past the patent office. I've watched a lot of their videos on YouTube and the lectures and things. I was listening to those while I was working in Hollywood sets, and yeah, this is legitimate. They are really trying to figure out how to get this free energy stuff to the public. They have many inventors, scientists, different people who can talk on this level and say, look, we're working together, but what can we do? Because we see the problem, but we can't get past the gatekeepers. So I believe it's coming. I believe that these inventors are now getting even more prominent because people are tired of what we've been under, this whole control. And they're breaking out into so many different directions. And it's amazing to be able to watch this from a distance and see all the different efforts being made on so many different levels. And it's going to come. Like, we are headed for greatness because there's too many people that are out here loose in the world now. And that's why we're seeing all the darkness. And they're screaming right now. The darkness is screaming because it's just being revealed that you're losing control of your slaves. Little darkness, sorry, but it's time for us to fly. And that's what's happening. This is what we're witnessing. This is a great time to actually be alive, even though it seems crazy and chaotic. But change is always going to come with chaos. It's going to be hard. It's going to be challenging. And get ready because this stuff is coming. And it's going to be amazing. So be careful with your choices on some of these healing modalities and techniques where they're coming out with medbed technology, and they have this other technology that claims to be benefit for your healing, and it's all of these electronics. Be careful with that stuff because there's free energy technologies that are much better, and especially the natural ones where people are actually stepping into their power of learning who they truly are and what they can truly do with their healing abilities. That's going to be the real meat and potatoes of it all. So, yeah, I mean, I'm excited for the future. I know that by 2030, we're probably going to see some really good light shining on us and that things are going to start getting a little bit easier. It's coming. Beautiful time is coming. And I've known this for a while now. I knew, even though it seems scary, I was like, I feel that it's going to be good. I don't know what it is that's coming, but I feel it. And I know you guys can feel it too. So we're going to walk hand in hand into the future, and it's going to be amazing for us. No more global elite, at least for 1,000 years. And yeah, they're throwing out their hooks and things now. But we just have to be mindful, watch for the traps to fall into, and just keep going because it's coming. Like everything's coming. See, breakthrough energy movement, no more lockdown, enough is enough. One by one, we're making all the presentations of the Breakthrough Energy Movement Conference 2019 accessible in the coming weeks. I'm sure that this was old, but you guys can go and look up Breakthrough Energy Movement on YouTube. Look at some of the different things that they talk about there because, yeah, I mean, this stuff is amazing, 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 amazing times of everything that's coming down the pipe right now. So I just wanted to leave you guys with that, different thought processes about this wheel of time and how it correlates with some of the form follows function of the buildings, just to give you guys something else to think about and to chew on, because I haven't seen too many people out here talking about this. And I will probably make a couple more videos based on this line of thinking, just to try to plant more seeds in regards to it. Because I do suspect that during that golden age, which is what those buildings represent, that these Grecian buildings represent the age of enlightenment. This was Atlantis, y'all. I suspect this is Atlantis / Lemuria on a very grand scale, and that they were using the 4 elements of alchemy. That's why everything was built in a natural manner. This does not mean that they're primitive. It means that they know what is septic and what's a beneficial energy. And they knew how to use the powers of their mind more than anything. Once you learn about all these different processes of what mentalism can do, the mind, body, energy, and spirit connection that's there, that is where we're going. But it's going to take a long time for us because we're a little bit behind on our learning because of the construct that we're in. And yeah, we have to go through all of these different difficulties and challenges to meet ourselves again in the future. And the future is this once more. Once we get there, back around to the golden age, because it's going to take a long time to get around this wheel. These are 2,150 years each. And this is the seasonal wheel of time versus the Vedic wheel. It's going to take us a long time to get back to this gold spring right here. This is the gold spring, and it begins with Gemini, because the wheel goes counterclockwise this way. Because if you look up at the night sky and you watch the stars, if you just sat down on the ground, you would watch the stars circle around counterclockwise. So they're going around Polaris. They go clockwise if you're looking down, from the stars. They go clockwise. Something to note. Yeah, that kind of information has kind of been revealed in a hypnosis session that I did with someone. So yeah, very fascinating. Let's keep this line of thought going, because I think that this is onto something with these different symbols and things. So, all right, well, that's all I have for you now, and I'll see you guys on the next one.